Hi guys, my name is Chad Schroffgruben. I am the founder and content creator for IncredibleTutorials.com. I have teamed up with Smith Micro to bring you these brand new Anime Studio 9 tutorials. So let's get started. Before we begin our new project in Anime Studio Debut, we should first adjust the project settings. So I'll go up to File, Project Settings. Here you can choose the dimensions, background color, and frame rate. For this project, I will choose NTSC and a frame rate of 24 frames per second. It's always important to adjust your project settings before beginning a project because it's easier to set it up before rather than change the settings, especially the frame rate, after you have laid down animation. So once you have your settings, we can click OK. For this project, there is one more thing I would like you to do. Go to Edit, Preferences. If you have Consolidate Timeline Channels selected, please deselect it. This will allow us to see multiple channels on the timeline at once. Since we'll be editing multiple channels in this project file, it only makes sense to deselect this option. If things get confusing, you can always go back into Preferences and check it. Once you've done that, click OK. This tutorial will be a basic overview of how to create a mini project in Anime Studio. Now, that means I won't be going in depth into all of the tools. I have plenty of tutorials for those tools, so you can watch those to get more in-depth knowledge of the tools. Here, you'll be getting a basic idea of how a project can take shape. So to get started, I first want to create a sky for my background. I can come over here to the Layers panel, double-click on the Layer 1 vector layer, and name this Sky, and click OK. Next, I will grab the Draw Shape tool, which is on my left toolbar. Make sure I have a rectangle. Now come over here to my Style panel, and the fill color doesn't matter so much because I want to create a gradient. So I will click on Effect and choose Gradient. Now I will choose some colors here for my gradient. So I'll double click on the white swatch and choose a dark blue. And I will leave the black color as it is and click OK. Now with the Draw Shape tool, I can draw out a rectangle that takes up the entire canvas. And if I want, I can adjust my gradient by clicking the Select Shape tool and adjusting the gradient by dragging these dials around. And that will work. Next, we'll be creating another layer. So I will click New Layer, make it a vector, and I will name this Land or Ground. Now taking the Draw Shape tool, I will select the oval. And now I can come over here to my Style panel, this time choosing a shaded effect. And I can adjust the angle here. And click OK. And now for the fill color, I'll choose a light gray. And I can adjust the width of my brush. I'll set this to 4. So now, I will just start right about here, hold down the mouse button, and drag to create an oval. I can take my Transform Layer tool and adjust this if I need to. And as you can see, we now have a shaded effect on this surface. I'm now going to go in with the Draw Shape tool again here, selecting the oval, and adjusting my fill color here, make it a little bit darker for the gray color. And I'm just going to draw some holes or shapes on my surface here. In looking at this, I may want to adjust a couple things, so I can take my Select Shape tool, click on one of these ovals, And I want to adjust the stroke color. I want to make it a dark gray color, so I'll just go ahead and do that. And you can see now it's dark gray and not black. And now I can do the same now for my other objects. So I'll select one and then grab the eyedropper tool and select the big one and keep copying these properties over to my other ovals. This sometimes happens when you draw something out. You may need to change it. Luckily, Anime Studio's tools allow you to easily make these changes. Now we're working within the boundaries of this project file, meaning we have a blue border that goes around the entire canvas, and you can see that right here. If at any time you need to see what this is going to look like to the audience, you can go to File, Preview, or Control R if you're on Windows, or Command R if you're on Mac. And so far we can see what this looks like. So now I'm going to make a couple more adjustments to my ground before moving on. Taking the Add Point tool, I'm going to make sure my sharp corners are turned off. And then I'm just going to add some points here. And as you can see, it's distorting my ground a bit. But I can go ahead and take my Translate Points tool and adjust this so that it looks similar to what I had before. It doesn't have to look quite the same. Okay, now I will take the Line Width tool, come in here, and I can adjust the width of these lines. Just to kind of give it some variation, almost to give it as if it's a drawn look, like I just quickly sketched this on the canvas. And I can go in and do some of the same things for my shapes in the circle, just to give it, again, some variation. Now, as you can see, I have a dark blue background, and it's kind of hard to tell what I'm doing with my lines here on this shape. If at any time I'm having trouble seeing what I'm doing, I can always click on the eyeball next to the layer I want to hide. So in this case, if I click on the eyeballs next to the sky on my layers panel, you can see now I can see what I'm doing much easier with this dark line color. Next, let's add some stars. So I will make a new layer, a vector layer, and name this stars. Now, going to the Draw Shape tool, I can click on the star, come over here to my Style panel, choose a stroke that's a little bit darker orange, and then a fill color that is a brighter yellow. I will turn the shade effect off for this. And now I'll come over here and start drawing up some stars. So like this, and this. You can vary in size and rotation. But just as long as we get some stars here on the canvas. So now what I want to do is click on my Translate Points tool, click on this star, and just hold down my mouse button and move it up, because I want to put another star here. But this star is going to be special. We're going to actually do some things with it. So the first thing I want to do is create a bone layer. A bone layer allows us to create bone structures for our objects. So I'll come over here to the New Layer button and choose Bone. And I can name this bone Star Character. Now I'll make another vector layer. And I'll name this layer Body. Now, taking my mouse, I'll hold in the left mouse button and drag this into the Star Character bone layer. Grabbing my Draw Shape tool, with the star shape selected, I will come in here now and draw out a star like this. It's a little bit bigger than the other ones, but that's okay. And I can move it down like so. You'll notice right here I have a crosshair that appears. This is the center of the current layer I am on. If at any time you want to adjust the center of your layer, you can click on the Set Origin tool and move it around. This will directly affect the resizing and rotation options you have available to you with the Transform Layer tool. But anyway, now that we have that drawn out, what I want to do here is zoom in, and I can do so with the wheel on my mouse or the zoom in tool on your left toolbar. And to make things a little bit easier, I can hide all the layers except for my bone layer and its sublayers. And to do this, you can hover your mouse over the bone layer, holding your Alt key, and then hit the left button on your mouse. So now, selecting the bone layer, I will come over here to my left toolbar and grab the Add Bone tool. Starting here, I can drag upwards to create one bone, and then this way to create a second bone. And now I want to select the first bone again because bones work on a hierarchy, and we want all bones to link to the first in this case. So I can either use my Select Bone tool or hit up on my keyboard to select that bone. Do so again. And one more time. Now to test this out, because when we are in frame 0, when working with the bone tool, we can play with the bone tool as much as we want without affecting the animation. And we can do that since we are currently in frame 0. So I'll take the Manipulate Bones tool. I can play around with this. I see that my bone strengths are actually up pretty high. So in order to adjust this, I can take the Bone Strength tool and simply come in here and hold down on a bone and go back like this to adjust the strength. So now if I use my Manipulate Bones tool, we can see that the bones work a lot better now because they are focusing more on a small portion of the star rather than a large portion. And as you can see, the star works pretty well with these bones. And if I page forward, then back, you can see it resets because we are on frame 0. So now let's add a face to our star. While in the bone layer, I can make a switch layer. A switch layer basically allows us to switch between sublayers at any given time on the timeline. This first one I'll name Eyes, and I'll make sure that it is in the star character bone layer. Now in the switch layer, we're going to need to make some vector layers. So I will choose New Vector, bring it into the Eyes switch layer, double click on this layer, and I will name it Closed. Now zooming in a bit here, I will grab the Add Point tool and make sure that Sharp Corners is selected. And for my stroke color, I will choose a darker yellow than I have right now for the outline of the star. And for the width, I will choose 2. And right here, I'll simply put in two lines. Take my paint bucket tool and select Stroke and fill those lines in. Now we want to make one where the eyes are slightly open. So, make a new vector layer. Come over here to my Shape tool. Select the oval. Change the fill color to white. And now, drawing these near the same area of my closed lines, I can start right here, draw like that. I can nudge this over a little bit. And then do the same now for the second eye. So just like that. Okay, and now we want them wide open. So I'll make a new vector layer in that switch layer and name this open. Grab the shape tool once again. Now we'll draw some circles like this. Bring them up more like that. A little bit over. More like that. Okay, so we have them closed, slightly open, and then wide open. Finally, I will make one more switch layer that has a blank vector layer. So, vector layer, and I'll name this one blank, and we will leave it blank. Finally, we need to add some pupils for those eyes. We can make the pupils on their own layers, or we can create the pupils in the eyes themselves. For this demonstration, I'll just put them in the eyes themselves. So I'll click on slightly open, zoom in here, grab the shape tool, change the fill to black, as well as my stroke, and I may even reduce the width to 1. And I can just come in here like this, draw a little pupil like that, same right there, and then we have them wide open, so then we'll come in and draw the pupils like this. So closed, slightly open, wide open, blank. So now we'll need a mouth. I can zoom out here. And I will choose to make a new switch layer in this bone layer. So, new switch layer. I'll name it mouth. And again, make sure that it's in the bone layer. And for a reference, I will turn my switch layer eyes on. So all I have to do is right click and choose open to see those open eyes now on the star. With the mouth, I will need a few vector layers. So first, I'll make a new vector layer. Make sure it's in the mouth switch layer. I can name it closed. Now, I will take the add point tool. But first, take the eyedropper tool, select the outline of my eye here so I can grab the line color that I have for my eyes. Then come in here, make sure that my sharp corners is deselected. And starting here, just draw a simple mouth like this. Take the paint bucket tool with stroke selected and fill it in. Now I'll make a new vector layer. What I can do here though is use the duplicate layer button. What this does is it makes a copy of the layer I currently have selected. So in this case, the closed mouth layer. So I can do that and name this one open, and now just expand on what I did for the closed mouth. So I can take my add point tool, come right about here, and add some points that go up like about that. And I had a white fill color selected, but if I want to change that, I can go into the fill color and we can make it a dark red like that. If I need to, I can adjust the points, sort of like that. And that looks pretty good. So we have closed, open. Last, I'll make another blank layer. So I will make a new vector layer in that mouth switch layer and name it blank. So now, let's begin the animation process. I will zoom out here, and I will bring back all of the other layers by holding down my Alt key and clicking on the bone layer. So now, first things first, I want to hide all of the switch layers. So in this case, for the mouth, it's currently on blank, which is good. For the eyes, I want them to be blank as well. So we'll pan out here so we can see what we're doing. So now we want a few frames of just still animation before we begin the animation to give our audience time to absorb the scene and see what's going on. With my keyboard or mouse, I will advance forward to about 36 frames in. Now, clicking on my bone layer, I will take the transform layer tool and I will click to create a keyframe. Now I will advance forward just 3 or 4 frames and then slightly move the layer this way. And then this way. And then this way. And as I keep doing this, the movements are going to become more exaggerated. Okay, so if I go back here to about frame 30 and play this, we can see that it's moving. And I may have exaggerated one of the movements a bit too much. So for this last one, I can go to that keyframe on frame 70 and simply just move it back. We can always edit our keyframes that way. Move this one down a bit, this one inward, and maybe this one inward as well. So we have it moving, it's jiggling, and then now we're going to have it fall. So after frame 70 on that keyframe, I'll advance forward, and I will have it fall like so. Now if we go back and play this, you can see it falls. What we can also do on this frame is rotate it with our transform layer tool. So I can just click and rotate like this. You'll notice though when I do this that the rotate layer tool starts rotating at frame 0. So basically the star will be rotating this whole time and we don't want that. We want the star to start rotating at about frame 70. So in order to do this, I can simply just rotate this back to close to its starting position. So now it'll just rotate from frame 70 to frame 84. And you can see before all that, it's not rotating, which is what we want. That's one important thing to keep in mind when you're working with keyframes. You always have to have your keyframe situated so that your movement corresponds with what you want. So now we will have the star sit here for a few moments, perhaps a second or so. So we'll page forward to about a second in, and then I'll click to create some keyframes. And now between this second, I want the camera to zoom in a bit. So we can grab the camera tool from our left toolbar. We can use both the track camera and the zoom camera. So what I'll do here with my track camera on frame 84, which is a keyframe that starts this pause, I will click to create a keyframe, then use the zoom camera to click to create a keyframe for the zoom camera. Now advancing forward to about frame 114, I can zoom in by holding down my mouse button with the zoom camera tool and just dragging downwards. And with the track camera, I can nudge this up to keep things in frame. So this is what it looks like. So now we'll have a few more frames of pause. So now at about frame 126, I will come over here to my eyes switch layer, right click, and choose the closed stance or the closed instance. And you can see now our eyes are now closed. And I'll do the same for the mouth. I'll right click and choose closed. We'll page forward now about 3 frames. And then right click and choose an open mouth. Right click on the eyes and choose slightly open. Page forward about 3 more frames and then right click and choose an open eye instance. So now we have the zoom in, and then he opens his eyes and his mouth. At about frame 144, I will click on my transform layer tool, making sure I am on the bone layer for the character. I will click on the star to create a keyframe for the translate channel, but also I'll come down here to my timeline and double click on the rotation channel to create a keyframe. And now we're going to have him sit up. So going to about, let's say, frame 152, I will rotate him this way and move him a bit like this. So it looks like this. And now we're going to have him dance or interact with our bone layer. So I would say starting at about 168, we're going to create that animation. But first, we want to, remember, set a keyframe for that bone before we want to have the bone to move. Otherwise, if we move it at 168 without any previous keyframe, the star's bones will be moving throughout this whole animation. And we don't want that. So in order to do this, we can click on our Manipulate Bones tool, and then just click on all of these bones to set keyframes. You can now see we have a bones channel on the timeline. So now, at 168, I'll move my bones like this. Actually, perhaps like this. So it looks like he's going like this. So we'll want the Transform Layer tool to correspond accordingly. So I'll take my Transform Layer tool, and we already have a keyframe set before this. So now we can just simply rotate it like this and bring it up like this. So it looks like he's moving like this. So now we'll do some more bone movement. Come down to about frame 180. And then take the Transform Layer tool and rotate him like this. So that's how the animation looks so far. And perhaps we also want him to lift his other leg here too, so we can go like that. And maybe even rotate him a little bit like that at frame 180. So it comes like this. Doing his little dance here. And now I'll have him positioned kind of more stationary like this. So I'll kind of bring it down like this and then rotate him. And now I'll have him do a jump. So about right here, 204. I will grab the Manipulate Bones tool once again. Raise his arms up. So we kind of have a look like that. It's going to jump up now, so at that layer, and then now we can just move him up like this with the Transform Layer tool. And then we'll bring him back down. And as he comes down, he will now reposition his legs. Like so. And actually, I believe he comes up, or comes down, I should say, a little bit too far. So I'll just take the Transform Layer tool and nudge him back to about there. Because that's kind of where he jumps. Yep, like about that. So let's play this whole thing out. I can just zoom out, come back here to frame 0, and hit play. I'll just deselect my layer there so we don't have all that path stuff in the way. So we play, we have some still, he falls, we zoom in, he looks up, and then he starts dancing. There is something missing though. We can't have a dancing star thing without music. So let's go to File, import audio file, and I'll bring in a piece of music. And as you can see, the music is now on my timeline. It also appears in the layers panel. We want the music to start at a specific point though. We don't want it just to play right away. We want it to probably happen when the star gets up and starts dancing. So let me page forward here. And I would say it's going to happen at about frame 144. So we can sequence this music to begin playing at that time. If we go over here to the sequencer, we can see all the layers we currently have in our project file. If I just scroll down here, I can find the music piece right here, and all I have to do is click and drag it over like this. So now, if I go back here to my Channels tab, snap back here, go back to frame 0, and play this out, you can see the music plays when he starts to dance. Now we could add more sound effects in here, perhaps a jingling sound when he's trying to escape, perhaps a thud when he hits the ground. We could use a boink sound or something like that when his eyes pop open. There are many different things you could do here. Using the sequencer will help you sequence these sound files, especially if you get into more complex animations later on where you have characters talking back and forth to each other. You can easily move the sound files so that their voices sync up with their mouths. And when it comes to the mouths, you can use switch layers, and you can use the automatic lip syncing function that is available in Anime Studio. So there are many options here available to you that I have not shown you in this brief example. Also, don't forget about the content in the character wizard and the content library. This built-in content can help you quickly build scenes and create animations if you're low on time or if you're just trying to learn the basics. Now, once you are all done with your animation, you'll want to go up to File, Export Animation. From here, you can choose to output it as a video or a flash file. You can choose which frames you want to include. Once you've done all that, click OK, and then you can pick a place to save it. From here then, in my case, I am using QuickTime, so I could find a codec I want to use for QuickTime, adjust my quality settings and all that, and click OK. The file will render out, and then you can play it back once it's done, and then you can upload it to Facebook or YouTube or wherever you want to upload it. You can especially take advantage of Anime Studio's easy-to-use uploader for YouTube if you want to as well. So there are many options here. And I believe that wraps up this lesson. If you have any more questions regarding Anime Studio, please visit the official Anime Studio website at anime.smithmicro.com. Thanks for watching, guys. I have more Anime Studio 9 tutorials out there, so be sure to check those out. I detail many of the tools and features in those tutorials, so if this brief lesson was not enough, please check those out, and I will see you next time.